Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so great to be with all of you today. Yes, I am back in the saddle today, self-producing. Annie, our amazing, beautiful, talented, brilliant producer, is off today. So it's just little old me in the studio, pressing the buttons and making things happen. And so we'll see how badly I can bumble this today. I know you guys all get a real kick out of when I mess things up when I'm self-producing, but hopefully this show will go very smoothly. It is Friday, of course. Thank you, Jesus. And thank you, Jesus, for Jesus as we move into the holiday weekend celebrating Easter, Resurrection Day. Today is Good Friday. And I just want to just say happy Easter to everyone in the audience today. For those of you who follow Christ and are believers, as I am, this is the holiday for us. This is the day where we celebrate the miracle that was the resurrection of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and the source of all hope. He is in every solution. He is the solution, and He is how we are free. And so, yes, let's move into this weekend and spend that amazing time with our friends and family, just, worshiping Him. So happy Easter, everyone. And it's good to be with all of you today live on the Shannon Joy Show. As you can see in the title of today's show, we have America's friendliest billionaire, Bonk the Carnivore, is going to be joining us today in just a minute to talk about freedom and slavery and that relationship to debt. You see the headline today of today's show, Debt and Slavery: How to Stay Free Amidst the Coming Plunder and Economic Crisis. And it is coming. The key to being free, in my opinion, and it's also biblical as well, to be honest, is being debt-free. And I make this statement not from a moralistic perspective, but as a simple calculation we should always be aware of, right? All debt brings a certain amount of lost freedom. Some debt might be worse than other debt, and sometimes it might make sense to take on debt in the shorter term. Regardless, this relationship between debt and freedom is inverse. And over the years, I have come, and I know many of you have as well, to value freedom over wealth. So I'm less tolerant of debt than I once was. And I think we all need to be that way. As citizens of the United States of America, we should also become intolerant of national debt. If we want liberty, we must force our leaders to stop the spending. And this has gone on now for decades. Our federal government continues to incur trillions of dollars in debt using the American population as collateral. Both political parties are in lockstep in their support of recklessly growing our national debt. And the Trump administration is no different whatsoever. So this is leading us to a crisis situation which will not only bankrupt us, but also enslave us. And that is the real crisis. We can deal with an economic crisis. We can figure out how to tighten our belts. We can move from being a nation of consumers who incur debt to savers so that they can produce. We can move through that and support each other and survive that. What we cannot survive is losing our God-given natural rights, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our freedom. And they will use any crisis. We know this about governments, left and right, whether it's Trump or Biden. They will use any crisis in order to further enslave us and destroy our liberty. And it's going to be no different in the coming months and years under this administration as we weather this financial storm. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen. We know the crisis, the financial crisis, the economic crisis is coming. We can survive it. We can also thrive in the midst of chaos as well. But we have to make sure that we don't lose our liberty. And today, Bonk the Carnivore is going to join us again for a critical conversation about survival and the preservation of freedom in these very precarious financial times. So without further ado, I am going to introduce and bring into the studio, audio only, our good friend Bonk the Carnivore. You can follow him on Twitter. His handle is at BonkDa, D-A, Carnivore. And he has been making the rounds. You will find him in a lot of spaces talking about finance, the economy, the tariffs, what's happening in the stock market. He has a wealth of information. and he's going to join us today to really answer some of our questions. Bonk, are you with me? Can you hear me?
I am. Pleasure to be here again, Shannon.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here with this audience. Live chatters, if you guys can do me a favor and let me know that you can hear Bonk de Carnivore, that the audio is good, that would be great. Let's do, the last time we had Bonk in the Joy Virtual Studio, kind of flew through his bio. We know that he is a very shy billionaire, very private, operates under the Twitter handle Bonk de Carnivore. But he is a son of the American Revolution, a former rescue pilot in the U.S. Coast Guard, very interesting, a PhD in economics from MIT Sloan, major studies in macroeconomics, behavioral economics, and organizational economics, and minor studies in applied economics and econometrics. He's a former executive in the cybersecurity space, a founder of a very successful venture capital firm. He's no longer a managing partner, but is still a majority shareholder. He's currently, and I love this part, Bonk, of your bio, politically homeless. He's a uniparty rebel, an educator on stock market mechanics, and really the most helpful, and when I say friendliest billionaire, Bonk, I have really enjoyed seeing your platform grow as you're going on podcasts and spaces and just helping regular little guys understand what is coming and prepare for it. It really is a true service, and I thank you for everything that you're doing.
No, it's a pleasure. And I was a little uneasy about the growth for a while, but I get so many DMs, especially after the last time I was on your show, because
Oh,
it was right before the markets really turned.
yeah.
And I got so many DMs from people that were like, I heard you on this show and I reallocated my portfolio. You saved me. Like, thank
Wow.
you for like my friends at the Bridge Club. They're talking about their retirement accounts are down 25%, and I'm only down 3, or I'm up 8. I'm getting all of these stories, and it's like, okay, I
Oh,
guess I'll tolerate the added growth.
it's amazing. It's amazing because you are very private. And so this is something that you do as a service to your country and your fellow American, which I think is amazing. Let's remind everyone about that advice that you gave because that was right before we had this major dip. But you were out there just giving good common sense advice regarding, not specific stocks, but where in general people should allocate. Can you remind the audience of that before we get into the larger aspect of this discussion?
Yeah. So what I was talking about was, if we're going into periods of contraction, you might want to get away from what are known as high beta names, which are, layman's terms, high risk, high reward, the high
Mhm.
flying tech stocks, so to speak,
Yep.
and get into more, defensive staples, things that will continue to plod along and continue to make money, even as the economy turns, even as tariffs start affecting prices and things. We talk about investing in companies that sell diapers and toilet paper and toothpaste and trash pickup services and electricity.
Hmm.
Just the boring things that most people don't think of when they want to invest in the market, because everybody wants the sexy tech company. They
Right.
want to buy a high flying semiconductor that's up and coming, or they want to buy some software company that they heard about. Um,
Right.
and those are the ones that really got hurt. Whereas the ones that I was talking about that just, they just plod along, they just make their cash, they fly under the radar. Those guys were okay, right?
Right.
Even on the worst days, those were usually, flat to green on the day. People didn't really worry about things if they were heavily invested in those. Grocery stores. Kroger did really well during that downturn, for example.
Right. Right.
It's actually up higher than it was. So, yeah, it was splitting your investments over towards precious metals, right? Uh, you know, Again, everybody thought
So
gold was the boring investment, and I pointed out gold went up 40% last year, and everybody was shocked. Well,
insane.
if you bought gold the day after Shannon, told you Shannon and I told you to buy it, you are now up 11%
It's
just
wild.
from that time,
Yeah.
right? Like
Well,
gold's doing incredibly well. So it's just identifying the world that you live in, understanding the framework that you're in, understanding that you can't change it,
mhm.
but what you can affect is how it affects you.
Right. Right. Great advice, and we are going to have a more detailed conversation about gold in just a little bit because very important things happening in that space. Bonk, can you tell me? It's been a couple of weeks since we've talked. Market took a little bit of a tumble. We are still in a very precarious spot. There is no change in the government's appetite for debt and deficit spending. They continue to overspend. New budget is just as bad as a Biden budget, if not worse. And so it looks as if we're going to continue on this trajectory. But you and I didn't have a conversation about tariffs. And that was the real, I want to say, atom bomb that sent things tumbling in the past couple of weeks is that, the rhetoric about the tariffs, the laying out, all of the DC theater regarding tariffs. What are your thoughts about the past couple of weeks and the impact of that tariff narrative coming from President Trump and his team?
It's a disaster, and this is the weird thing. It doesn't matter what economist or what person you talk to that understands capitalism, whether they're left, right, center, Paul Krugman, Milton Friedman, acolytes, myself, whatever it is, we all agree like this is the worst fiscal decision in 95 years.
Mm.
It's the largest tax increase on the American populace in history. In history, it dwarfs Smoot-Hawley. And for those who don't know, Smoot-Hawley, big catalyst for the Great Depression. You can draw a straight line from that to World War II. It's catastrophic. He came out and everybody thought he was just going to do some global 10 or 15% reciprocal tariff on the world to try and negotiate free trade, and he didn't do that. He came out and he picked a fight with our biggest trade partners, people that we rely on, people that have been allies with us since day one. People that have happily bought up our debt and allowed us to continue this ruse that we're actually free when in reality we're selling our freedom to people that are willing to buy our debt, put us in chains. It was so much worse than anybody predicted, and the results on the market, on the economy have been predictable. Obviously the market has done what it's done. It's down over $10 trillion at this point. 10-year yield rates, which are important for refinancing our debt. And more importantly, they're important for private citizens that want to buy a house, right? It affects mortgage rates. It affects credit lending. It affects all. That's continued to be sticky. The value of the dollar is, it's coming up on a low right now. It's losing ground to the euro, to the pound, to the yen, to the Swiss franc. We lost 4% to the Swiss franc one day, a week or two ago. Like that never happens. Everything is just going the way it shouldn't go. And that's really unfortunate. But as you say, there's no appetite in Washington, D.C. right now to change course and, maybe examine things and face some hard truths about, how we've spent and how we continue to spend and what this means.
Do you have any insight into what is motivating this president to take this path? Because there's a lot of speculation. I mean, some people just think he's lost his mind. He's like a madman president. I don't believe that. I tend to think that he is more of a puppet president who is doing what he's told, and it's whoever is behind him, a combination of the tech bros and the banksters who have certain agendas, I suppose. But do you have any idea? I mean, this is, again, it's a disastrous path. It's going to create an enormous amount of pain for the average American citizen. But can you, and then there are some people, Bonk, who say this is a grand master plan. He's actually playing 12-dimensional chess, and he's brilliant. And, just hunker down and take the pain, because what he's doing right now is negotiating. And I can see, I mean, it's very confusing. I mean, there's so many different angles coming out. But do you have any idea of what is the motivating factor for doing it this way?
I've heard all the theories, and I always, you think back to that old Taco Bell commercial from the 90s. Why not both? It could be that he's slowed down a little bit. I don't think his processing power was ever that great to begin with. I think part of it is he's being told what to do. I 100% believe that. Again, Elon said last year in an interview that his goal was to burn down the economy and then rebuild it in its perfect form, because he's a transhumanist.
Mm.
There are certain other people. Peter Thiel is really profiting off of this. Palantir getting all these new contracts, so on and so forth. And part of it is just I speculate part of it is just pettiness. He keeps talking about 2020 and how he was robbed and stolen. And I honestly think that part of the reason why he's inflicting pain on the populace and he's, turning against our international friends is because he's still just upset that we didn't have his back when he threw a temper tantrum 5 years ago.
Unbelievable.
Um, I part of me thinks that he just doesn't care if the populace suffers. He's not going to he's not facing reelection again. He thinks they screwed him, and let's be honest. There's nothing in this man's history to indicate that he would not be so petty as to inflict pain on others for a perceived slight, even years later. Um,
Absolutely.
and part of it is just, again, it doesn't affect him. He doesn't feel this. I talked about this on another podcast a couple of days ago. The majority of people in, kind of my sphere, we're immune to the politics of the moment, the economic developments of the moment. And, I don't want to say that we're callous about it, by and large, but if we don't feel it, then maybe it's not important to us. But it is important to the people that it affects the most pain on, and
Mm.
I think we've lost the ability to really put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and understand what the effect, the marked effect is on them versus us.
Mm. I've always tried to explain to people it's not even a wrong thing. It's inevitable. Like Donald Trump doesn't have the capacity, no human has the capacity to care for and think about and want to protect every individual American citizen. Like it's not even possible for him to quote unquote care, right? He should, right? Collectively, he should be able to process and see what his actions are doing to impact, regular people. But for some reason, in the American population, and this it exists on the left and the right, individual Americans tend to imprint on their favored political leader and believe that favored political leader actually cares about them or loves them or wants the best for them. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's too emotional. Politics should be transactional, right? Like you hammer them. You never trust them. And the only time you ever give them any credit is when they actually deliver discernible policy outcome. Otherwise, it's off with their head, right? But in America, we don't do that anymore because we're so divided. But I've always wondered about that emotional bond that Americans have to some of their political leaders. And I think we have to stop doing that.
It is, and it's bizarre, and it's a recent development, right? It happened over the course of our lives at some point. Like we were alive for the switch, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly when that occurred. But yeah, the idea that we're supposed to just trust our leaders is absurd because our founding father, like the whole reason they wrote the Constitution the way it was done, is because they didn't trust themselves.
Right,
They said, "Don't trust us,"
right.
right? Um, my direct ancestor, like we talk about this, right? Roger Sherman. He's the one that created the legislative branch, essentially, right? The Sherman
Yeah,
Compromise was the creation of the Senate and the House as a
yeah,
firewall, as a check and a balance against the executive branch. They are not there to be a rubber stamp. That was never the intent. The wisdom of our founding fathers was they understood that we were men and that as men we were imperfect. Um,
exactly.
and somehow we've gotten away from this to where we're deifying people that are just nothing but charismatic grifters.
Yeah,
And as you say, we imprint on them and we believe that they would give us the time of day.
right.
uh, that's not true. And there's nothing to suggest that it has been true for quite some time yet. We refuse, we still pile into our team red, team blue little vans, and we treat it like wrestling, essentially. The WWE, I guess it's WWE now. When I was a kid, it was the F. But
Yeah.
uh,
I was marveling with Catherine Austin Fitz earlier this week about how Trump was literally a WWF wrestler. Like that was, he played the billionaire villain and used to wrestle with Vince McMahon, like as part of the show. And I think he was legit, like on the roster. He was technically a wrestler. Isn't that crazy to think that
yeah,
now we,
towards the end of my childhood, I think I saw him do a couple of appearances. It was just to kind of, push his
Yeah.
public persona, I guess. I don't know how active he was in it, but I mean, the reality is he's been a television actor for quite some time,
Yes.
and it's bizarre to me that people can't see through that. They just see the charisma of it, and I don't know. I guess people just want to believe in spite of all evidence of the contrary.
Absolutely. It's true. Who was it that said if men were governed by angels, then we wouldn't need governments? It was someone smart somewhere. I don't know who it was, but that was one of the quotes. You know what else they wrote? They wrote in order to form a more perfect union. So they knew that they couldn't even, that men couldn't create something perfect. That we would always, I mean, everything that is ever built, every institution can be and usually is corrupted over time. And then you have to throw off those bonds and create something new, which is what our founders and our framers did. In this case, we don't need, I think the Constitution is fine. I think the problem is no one's following it. Like
Yeah,
it's
well, I mean, our founding fathers had a different idea too. They had commentary about the Tree of Liberty, and we like to think ourselves a more civilized society these days. So,
right.
we've taken that off the table. Whereas our founding fathers, they would have reached for the muskets by now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Listen, I can't believe that people weren't storming into hospitals and nursing homes to save their loved ones during COVID. But in terms of bloodshed, I think that as a result of COVID and the kill shot, in the hospital democide and what happened in our nursing homes, I think that there has been actually a great amount of bloodshed in this country. It's just different, right? It's happening in a sterilized environment from a needle or a protocol rather than at the barrel of a gun. And I don't think people really consider that right now. Like, and I do believe that I think we might be at war. It feels like war. The DoD involvement in a lot of that. The fact that we're still, that emergency use authorization is still in place, the emergency declaration is still in place. All of those protocols are ready to be deployed. I think we are in something, right? I mean, I don't know how you would define what we're engaged in right now, but it feels like war to me at times.
I would say that we're under attack, but we're still being very passive about it, hoping that it will go away. And
Right.
there's no indication that it was. As you said, 5 years ago, they declared emergencies, and I won't say nobody stormed, right? Because my grandmother, when she was dying, they tried having us do that visitation through a pane of glass situation.
Mhm.
Um, and I could tell it was breaking her up. So I sent my wife and kids back to the car, and I opened the window and I climbed in and I locked
Good
the
for
door to
you.
her room because she was in hospice care at the time.
Good
And
for you.
I had a P360. I put it on the nightstand, and
Mhm.
when they came to open the door, I just looked at the P360. I looked at them, and they walked away, and I just spent some time with my grandmother.
Mhm.
Eventually, I was not so politely told to never return to that facility again. But
You
I
did the right
still,
thing.
but
You did the right thing.
we tolerated those emergencies then, and we're tolerating them now. This entire administration thus far has just been, well, we're declaring a fiscal emergency, therefore we have to launch a global trade war. We're declaring an immigration emergency, and it's not even that I disagree with that statement, but now we have to take these extraordinary measures to do away with due process and ignore our constitutional requirements and how to tackle this.
Right.
um, everything is our hair is on fire. It's too critical. We must do away with our system of checks and balances. We must do away with due process. We have to act now.
Right.
And people didn't used to be willing to tolerate that. And everything's a stress test, and continually, people keep accepting it. And
Yes.
if they keep accepting it, then everything will continue to be an emergency.
Yes. And again, things can get bad, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to go into, like you said, the hair on fire moment where we give up our God-given natural rights. And that is where the constant pressure on this economy, on Main Street and the little guy, on the average American family, it's relentless. It is relentless pressure. And I can tell you, Bonk, as a small business owner, I mean, there is no stability here whatsoever. It's the antithesis of what you need to have a growing and thriving market, right? Like you need some notion that there is stability. that you can make decisions for a business and be confident there isn't going to be some major upheaval or some arbitrary and capricious tax in the form of a tariff is going to be dumped on your head, changing everything. And so just the instability is bad enough, but also the debt, which is, the topic of the show today. Can you explain to the audience how this instability and also this continued debt leads to slavery? How there's, we have to get a handle on what it means to be in debt, when it makes sense to maybe take on a little bit of debt, but also the very important relationship between debt and freedom, because they are intertwined.
Yeah, and the reality is, like, at our current debt levels, we don't control our future anymore.
Right.
At some point it sort of flipped, and people don't understand that we're now beholden to others in such ways that it directly impacts our ability to grow. And what he's doing is, particularly with small businesses, he's creating contraction within the economy. But the only way we're going to get out of the mess we're in is through growth. We have to start getting more receipts, right? It used to be we didn't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. Now we've got both, right? Now
Yes.
we've got contracting revenue as well. We take in 4.9 trillion in receipts, but we throw out 6.8 trillion, and that's just last year. This year it's going to be, I think the deficit's going to be almost three trillion by the time it comes through. Over the next 5 years, we're looking at a minimum of 10, and that's just what he started with, right? He's going to keep declaring these emergencies and keep spending more money. To the point where last year alone, every person in this country, they spent $19,900. And I don't mean like every worker in this country. I mean, an infant that was born December 31st, 2024, accounts like they were saddled with $19,900 worth of debt just off what we spent last year.
Unbelievable.
Hadn't even had their first taste of milk yet. It's absolutely obscene. So at some point we have to have these conversations of how are we going to grow our receipts, and also how are we going to do measured austerity, kind of take our medicine a little bit and cut our spending in certain ways, in order to balance this out, because we're on an unsustainable path, and certainly by inflaming our allies that hold the majority of our debt, it doesn't put us in a position to where we can do as some other countries have done, where it's like, okay, we need to kind of hit the reset button a little bit. Let's negotiate down our interest rates a little bit so we service the debt. Things of that nature. Maybe forgive some of it in exchange for all the goodwill that we've provided them over the last 80 years. Particularly European debt holders, right? I mean, we can just point back and be like, hey, if not for the Marshall Plan, you guys would still be a steaming pile of rubble right now.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we could have used some goodwill to maybe, kind of get this under control, but we're burning all of that. And until we're ready to take a hard look at our mandatory expenditures and cut where things are able, but also promote the ability to take in more tax dollars and get higher net revenues, higher margins, we're on a path to ruin, and we're at the closing stages of it. We really are.
Right.
It's the point now where service of our debt eclipses what we're spending in defense. It's fast approaching. It's going to take a while for it to catch up to Social Security as our number one, situation, but it's going to get there in our lifetimes at this rate, and nobody seems to care.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's clarity. I think that there are clear solutions. You have presented clear solutions to this problem. Catherine Austin Fitts, absolutely brilliant over at Solari Report, has presented very clear solutions. These are not easy solutions to our problems, but they are clear, and they involve a certain level of austerity, as you mentioned, starting up those supply lines again, getting American businesses and manufacturing. And I mean, they're talking about bringing manufacturing back to the US, but they're not talking about staffing those factories with humans. They're talking, Howard Lutnick is talking about the, factories and data centers that are run by AI and robots. So, we just have to rethink what the new 21st century economy is going to look like. It's going to be different, but it could be one in which average people can survive and thrive. And that's what we're talking about today with Bonk de Carnivore. You can follow him on Twitter. His handle is at Bonk de Carnivore. When we come back, we're going to ask about the questions that you want to hear about. How to survive. Right? It's coming. There's going to be impact. What do we want to do? We want to survive as a family, and we want to hang on to our freedom. We don't want to let them scare us to the point where we will accept another kill shot, this time an economic kill shot as presented to us by our controllers. And so we're going to ask Bonk about that when we come back here on the Shannon Joy Show. So keep it tuned. We'll be back in a moment. So here's a little trivia, everyone. What have human beings been using to cook for 5,000 years of human history? Are you stumped? Well, the answer is ceramic. Some of the very first cooking artifacts that have been discovered were created using ceramic. And if you fast forward to 2025, the ceramic cookware that I use every day is from Chef's Foundry. The P600 sizzle set is a regular feature in the Joy kitchen. And the best part is that ceramic, unlike most nonstick Teflon pans, doesn't have any of those nasty chemicals like PFAs, lead, or cadmium. Don't let poison seep into your food and serve up lead to your children. It's time to start cooking like the natives with Chef's Foundry and get that P600 sizzle set for 55% off with a limited time offer for the Joy audience exclusively. Go to www.chefsfoundry.com/joy for this exclusive deal and start sizzling with Chef's Foundry today. Hey everyone, so what is scarier than a storm or a blackout? Being completely cut off, alone. No phone, no internet, no way to reach anyone. This is why I trust sat123.com and their satellite phones to keep me connected no matter what. With a satellite phone from Sat123, it doesn't matter if you're out in the wilderness or caught in the middle of a disaster. This phone works when cell towers don't. It's the ultimate tool for staying in touch when everything else has failed. Here's the best part. Sat123.com is family owned. 100% committed to quality and reliability, and they believe in keeping you and your family safe wherever you are. Right now, if you go to sat123.com/joy, that is sat123.com/joy, and use the Joy promo code, JOY, for 10% off, you'll get 10% off your entire order, which is a phenomenal deal from an amazing company that supports the Shannon Joy Show. Be ready for anything. Stay connected with sat123.com/joy. Shannon Joy here with an urgent retirement warning. Trade tensions, tariffs, and China's relentless attack on the US dollar have rattled the markets. This is why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And so has Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even Jamie Dimon, CEO of the world's largest bank. Just recently, Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki warned of a coming market crash. This is why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. And the experts at Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you do the exact same. Visit www.colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy or call 888-705-0950. You'll get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth with gold tax-free. Plus, see if you qualify for a free home safe and as much as $7,500 in free silver. Once again, that's www.colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy or call 888-705-0950 to protect your wealth today. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. And true story, as you guys know, I've been working with Colonial Metals Group for quite some time now, well over a year. I want to say over a year and a half. I use them for all of my physical gold and silver purchases. I don't even call it a purchase. I call it a trade, right? So I trade dollars for physical gold and silver. And I've been building up in anticipation of the coming turmoil. I now feel pretty comfortable in my hard assets, that area of my diversified, I guess, assets. I don't have that many, but what I do have. And I'm now moving into the gold, silver backed IRA. So I've been talking to Colonial, and I'm going to begin to put that together. The way it works is essentially you have a self-directed IRA. They set you up with self-directed IRA, and then you can decide yourself where you want that allocated. So you start with the physical gold and silver. It's not backed by paper gold or gold or silver stocks, but it's the physical gold and silver. You back up your IRA with that, and then you have the opportunity to add to it monthly and also decide where else you want to invest. And so you can go in and it's self-directed. You can decide if you want those boring stocks that Banque de Carnivore was talking about. You can go in and invest in other areas. So I'm going to lead you guys all through that process as I go through it. But we are beginning to set that up right now. If you have a desire to learn about protecting your retirement with physical gold and silver, please call them. colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy is my page. You have to go to my page so that they know I sent you. And of course, make sure that you tell them that Shannon Joy sent you. Okay, Banque de Carnivore, we are back. And your audio is good. Mine is not so good, says the live chat. I know, guys, I'm buying a new mic. I'm getting a new mic. Annie says I have to do it. So don't worry. I'm going to, go and figure out a better mic situation. So we'll work on that in the next week. But so Banque, you heard as we were exiting, the mission here now is to inform as many people as we can, get people ready to go so that they can survive whatever is coming. And a lot of that has to do with people being invested, being diversified, not in different stocks and bonds, but in like different asset classes. What do you think is an appropriate mix for people in terms of those asset classes? And then, what would be your advice for, the average middle-class American who is like hunkered down, ready to go, but needs to make some good decisions moving forward to protect themselves as we enter this pretty scary economic time?
Yeah. So for me, I'm mostly sitting in cash right now.
Okay.
I'm about 60% cash out of my usual deployments. Understanding that that's just my investment money, right?
Okay.
Sitting on the sidelines waiting for opportunity.
Mm.
Um, I've still got about 25%, maybe 27 point something, if I recall correctly, that's presently deployed in the markets.
Okay.
For most people, you're going to want at least 10% in some sort of a hedge, that being metals. Those are doing very well right now. And then a point or two just hanging out. And I know you hate these, but you should still have exposure to them. A point or two in cryptos.
Oh,
But
come
the mainline cryptos, not the Trump coin. Don't go buy the Trump coin or fart coin. Although fart coin has oddly enough outpaced the market the last month. But don't take that as proof that it's an investment. It's not. But you should be diversified in that way. But you should mostly be sitting on the sidelines at this point, because as I say, markets are either resting or racing.
Mm.
And obviously, very recently they've been racing. They're racing down, but racing nonetheless.
Okay.
I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds and market structure here, but we're in the midst of something known as a Wyckoff pattern,
Okay.
which essentially means that markets have come down so much that we're almost required to have a relief rally. If you are agile, you can participate in that. Relief rallies can be very violent to the upside.
Mm-hmm.
But once that buyer exhaustion wears out, and it always does in these patterns, it
Mm-hmm.
forms the next leg down, right? So everybody thinking that this is the bottom or that we're near the bottom. No, right now we're kind of almost in a rest period. This past week in the market, it was down overall, but it was relatively flat, relatively speaking, compared to the last month and a half or two. So it's going to trap people into deploying more capital into it before they pull the rug out from you and take it down even further.
Okay.
So, you should be very defensive right now until we sort our stuff out and we get some direction from the top of our leadership chain and direction that sticks, not something that like I've made a very decisive choice and then 2 days later, like completely go back on it. Until
Mm-hmm.
we get that, you should be playing small and defensive and just looking to kind of duck and weave.
Okay. Yeah. It seems violent, right? And when I say arbitrary and capricious, it just seems to, I mean, it turns on a dime, the rationale that they're making for certain fiscal and monetary policies. And so I agree with you there. Now you mentioned cash 60%. Some people would say, why would you be in cash? The dollar, we're all predicting that the dollar is going to be crushed, that, you know, they're going to essentially try to collapse the dollar. Interesting side note, fun fact. Scott Besson, who is the head of the Department of the Treasury, a Treasury Secretary, was actually the guy. I don't know if you noticed this, Bonk, but he was the mastermind, like the co-mastermind with George Soros in 1992 when they collapsed the British pound.
Yeah, he's got a pretty sordid history.
I mean, like, is this just a coincidence? Or,
No,
but yeah, like,
it's really not.
why be in cash if you don't think it's a coincidence?
No, it's really not. You look at all three of these quote unquote architects of this, you know, if you want to call it a fiscal policy at this point, I don't even know you can call it that. You know, him, Howard Lutnick, who I've not so kindly started referring to as Nutlick. Um, uh, and then our dear friend Ron Vera, you know, no, they've all hitched their wagon to this, and the reality is, I have no doubt in my mind, and we can look at the tape on the markets. I have no doubt in my mind that them and their circle, they're insider trading on this.
Oh yeah,
You know, they're getting fabulously wealthy off the chaos, and that's part of the reason why their messaging is so inconsistent.
right.
Because you know, I think they're positioning themselves ahead of this chaos in order to extract as much as they can. Like all three of them have very sordid histories in terms of, you know, ethical dealings.
Mm.
You know, I don't want to go into all of them. I mean, Howard's the worst of the three of them, but yeah, there is a direct correlation there. Like there are certain these are corporate raiders that have been given access to the levers of power, and it should have never happened.
Unbelievable. You're absolutely right. So, but my question about cash, why are we holding so much cash if we think it's gonna the dollar's gonna collapse?
So it has more to do with having an available liquidity pool in order to find opportunity,
Okay.
right? You know, if you're in cash, your money is generally stable, right? The dollar is getting progressively weaker right now. I mean, it's trading near 52-week lows. As I said, it's weakening against other currencies, but you know, compared to everything else, it's generally been pretty stable. Gold, obviously, the metals have been doing particularly well. Maybe not so much silver, but some of the others. Um, you know, but those are harder to exchange for dollars on a dime, right? So if you just
Right.
come across an opportunity, you have to take extra steps in order to convert that into something else. Having a liquidity pool just means that you have cash ready to deploy at a moment's notice if you come across a good investment opportunity for real estate, for a business.
Got it.
You know, if you come across, for example, there was in the stock market, there was a very large company. You know, the CEO had dinner with Mr. Trump at Mar-a-Lago about a week ago, and it had something to do with restriction on sales to China, which directly impacted this company. And they came away from that dinner, and everybody said, "Okay, Mr. Trump has backed off this policy." And institutions started piling into this company. Right? Everybody's like, "Okay, cool. We know this company is safe. This company is okay." And then a few days later, he starts tweeting out. He's like, I'm going to like expedite all the permits. This company can spend $500 billion building manufacturing here. And everybody piled in even more on the company. They're like, yes, this is the company. This is the one. We found the winner. And then literally 20 minutes after the market closed that same day, he went, oh, I changed my mind. All sales to China are now banned. And that company just plummeted the next day. And it took the entire market with it because it's the most important company on the entire market. You know, that's
Wow.
you want to be ready to deploy with that sort of thing. You didn't want to be the early one in because you got the rug pulled on you because again, this was the chaos. This was the intent. And you can see the insider trading. The people went short on the stock market right before he announced the sales of bans to China, like 20 minutes before. So people knew, but you know, everything got dragged down. But now that company is you know, good value, right? You look at it and you go, well, I mean, they're still going to sell to everybody else, and they're probably still going to sell their Chinese supply. So you know, if you had that liquidity pool set aside, you had a good opportunity
Got it.
Thursday and Friday to, go in on that.
Got it. Got
Um,
it. That they're like pirates. They're like criminal mafia pirates.
they're,
This
they're
is
not even
insane.
trying to hide it.
They're not even
That's the
hiding
worst part. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. Like
it.
they're just so blatant about it. It used to be they'd at least try to cover their tracks,
Yeah.
but
Okay, tell me about gold. You mentioned you like gold right now. I like gold. I like physical gold. I like all things gold and so. And Jesse Colombo, he writes the Bubble Bubble Substack, which I really like. I've been using Jesse Colombo for over a decade. I love the way he writes. He is making the case that silver actually is heavily suppressed by like the big king bullion banks, right? That they're like every time silver looks to break out a little bit, they smash it down by, I don't know, buying paper silver or exactly how they do it. But what are you thinking about gold right now? Because, this could be, I mean, this is when you say a hedge, this is the asset class that protects you when the big thing hits, right? And allows you to cross the bridge because the financial collapses don't last forever, right? They markets still emerge because people always want to buy houses and plant gardens and get married and have children. Like economies exist because humans want to do things. So that's not going to change if there's this chaos. But people are going to lose everything if they don't have something to hedge against that. So can you explain how gold works in that capacity?
yeah. So gold is great because it's a finite resource. And to a lesser extent, I also like palladium. I like platinum. I'm not so much into silver. Silver is just not rare.
Yeah.
Uh, Silver bugs try to convince me. It's not that I don't have silver. It's just I hear the silver bug story, and I'm
Hmm.
like, man, we keep finding these huge deposits of it. Like there's just so much of it.
Okay.
But gold is fantastic. Not only because of its limited resource, but also at a macro level, because as our allies start cashing in, our debt, they have to turn it into something. And if they don't particularly like us, they're not maybe going to be so inclined to turn it into the US dollar, even though that's the reserve currency. So what's the next logical thing that they can all universally trade? It's going to be gold,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that's why you're seeing these gold prices spike. You're seeing institutions and foreign nations, they're selling our debt, and then they're moving that money. They sell the debt into US dollars, they turn those US dollars into gold, right? It's something physical, and it's something that they can trade amongst themselves. So as this gets worse, as our contraction gets worse, but more importantly, as our allies start trading amongst themselves, excluding us in the process and maybe not using our currency,
Right.
that becomes the dominant form, which therefore means it's going to become stronger.
Right. Right. Um, and so what do you in terms of like how to hold it and that type of thing? Like, can you give people some advice on, you say 10% as the hedge?
At
And
least, at
okay.
least.
For regular people, what are some of your recommendations in terms of acquiring and getting in?
I'm of the belief that if you can't hold it, it's not real.
Okay.
So in the basement of all of my houses, I've got a big gun safe.
Hmm.
And each one of those safes, they're just filled with metal.
Okay.
And not the metal that they were designed for. I got a
Right.
different gun safe for those.
Right. Right.
But you should physically want to hold it. And the reality is, you can go to your local Costco and buy the bars. They'll sell them to you at spot price. You can
Right.
go to a coin shop, buy coins, buy something that you can put in your hand. You can look at that's real.
Right.
It's not that I'm against gold ETFs. I play some of them a little bit. There's a
Mhm.
company, Eldorado Gold, the AU ETF. It's okay. You're buying certificates versus the underlying equity. One of your sponsors has that kind of gold IRA situation. It's
Well,
backed by real gold somewhere. You don't see it,
yeah.
but it is actually real. There's
Yeah.
something at the other end of that. Where I get really sketchy are the ones where it's, they're trading off the value of gold, not
Mm,
necessarily the possession of it.
right.
And that's where things start to get sketchy for me.
Absolutely, and that was one of the deep dives I did with Colonial Metals when we brought them on, and we had a lot of conversations about that. I certainly do think there is the physical gold, and that's what I started with, and then now I'm branching out, and I do think as physical gold. And here's the other thing, though, as physical gold, increases in value and people wake up to what is going on. Like we're seeing, Bonk, across the country, all sorts of state legislation and initiatives to create, gold. What is it for commerce? What is the name of it that I'm seeing here? Also to set up, state sovereign banks, transactional gold. That's Kevin Freeman, who wrote Pirate Money, who's been on the Shannon Joy Show. Now with technology, I think, and in crypto or electronic, like you could see situations where actual physical gold can be used in a way that is transactional. And I've done a couple shows on it. So in that case, then you have all of the derivative markets behind actual physical gold that do well. So I just think that there's a lot of upside in all of it. Just curious about your thoughts there.
Somebody asked that question at the end last time I was on, and I made a mental note to go back and read into it, particularly the interstate commerce of it.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I was a bad student.
Okay.
I didn't do my homework.
Okay.
So this is something I can, talk on a kind of a high level. I can speculate on a little bit, but I generally like to only speak about things that I have like real knowledge of. I don't want to be the guy just throwing out theories.
Yeah. Well, no, all information is good information. And I think that your advice has been a godsend for a lot of people, and you've helped a lot of people with, because most billionaires, right, don't just like dish on what the little guy should do. It's like they don't give up their secrets. And I mean, not that you're giving up all the secrets, but you're really, it's so refreshing to hear this kind of advice from someone who has figured out how to navigate this. And I think that the people that take your advice will be the people, like you mentioned a few weeks ago, that moved things around in their portfolio, went for those kind of boring old stocks, actually did much better than the people who were in all the sexy stocks and all the big tech. Which, by the way, Ed Dowd says all that. He was talking about a lot of the big tech stocks. That a lot of that is, I mean, they're way overselling how sophisticated their technology is, and AI as well. And there a lot of people are saying it looks like a little bit more like a bubble. So very good advice, and I appreciate you for that.
Always happy. I mean, I'm more bullish on AI than some people. I think it's real, but it's that's because I was deeply involved in it.
Yeah.
Not to scare your viewers, but I'm of the belief that within the next 10 years, 40% of all jobs are going to be disrupted by this technology. So that's a scary conversation for another day.
I want to have that conversation with you because you and we had a conversation on a Spaces about that, right? It's scary. So where do the jobs go? And for me, it's kind of exciting. Like, what if we went back to kind of, I don't know, like a time when people are self-sufficient and they can use technology to generate their own energy for their own little homestead, and people spread out all over the country, and we're not in urban situations anymore. We're all living in like rural areas. I think that sounds fabulous, to be honest. So maybe like if we just reimagine what the future looks like with some of those technologies, as long as we still have our freedom, we can be okay. That's why we have to fight for the freedom, because
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No.
I was going to say, and that's the thing. It's a tool, just like anything else. Tools can be used for good or evil.
That's right.
And if we had come up with this tool in the 1950s and the 1960s, when CEOs made 13 times the frontline worker, and everybody generally believed in community, and we had strong senses of patriotism, and we wanted the rising tide to lift all the boats, I would feel way more confident in how we're going to use this tool for the betterment of all. But we fast forward to today, the CEOs are now making, I'm not even going to say how many times more than the frontline workers. I'm just going to say there's a comma in that number now. And nobody's working out for the community anymore. Everybody's jostling for their own position amongst themselves. And we have a very select few that really value their position on the Forbes list, and they will do whatever it takes and stamp out whomever they have to in order to just move up a spot on a list. We don't care anymore, and therefore I'm less bullish on how we're going to use that tool, because that is a tool that can be used by those that have those kind of resources in order to further their position at the detriment of others. And then there's some outliers. Look, you can look at the Forbes list. I promise you, there's at least 60 or 70 names that aren't on that list that belong on it. Mine's one of them. I'm telling you,
Wow.
it's not on it because I don't have a publicist, and I don't reach out to Forbes, and I don't give them my account receipts, and I don't tell them where I'm at. I'm perfectly happy not appearing anywhere near the top of that list.
I know
Uh,
you are. Yeah.
and I'm not the only one. Like, we're out there. We're really out there. As you say, but as you say, most of them aren't interested in helping the community anymore. And I made the joke in another podcast just the other day. It feels like it's just me and Mark Cuban out there, out in the island right now. We're the
Wow.
only two people speaking anything, and it
Yeah.
makes me uncomfortable because I usually mock Mark. I usually make
Right?
the joke is like, he's proof that if he can become a billionaire, anybody can. And I'm like, how did I end up on the island with this guy?
It's wild. I mean, I need to have, I know you have a heart out, so I want to respect your time, Bonk. I
Yep.
know you're a very busy billionaire, and very friendly for coming in and helping us out a little bit for an hour. We have to have you back again, though. Like, I'd like to have you back in a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks, because I do want to talk about these technocracy, which you mentioned. Also, Elon Musk, the transhumanist. You mentioned that today in the show, and people really need to understand what this guy is all about. And I'm sure a lot of crazy things will happen in the meantime anyway that we'll have to talk about. So I really appreciate you. Any last words before I let you go and you go on your merry way?
No, again, just don't panic. This is a snapshot in time. This too shall pass.
That's right.
One of the things I was always taught, growing up, because we had a lot of oil money as well. Oil prices would crash, and my grandfather would always be, eh, it'll come back up again at some point. Like,
Okay.
just don't worry. It might take a while. It might take years. Hopefully, we'll snap out. But
Mhm.
it's as long as you keep it small, keep it at the micro level. Look out for your local community. From community, growth occurs, right? First you fix your neighborhood, then you fix your town, then you fix your county, then you fix your state,
Yeah,
and then maybe you fix your country.
there you go.
We got a lot of work ahead of us. We've dug a really bad hole, but
Aw.
but we can pull out.
Well, guess
Anyway, I've got a little bit of time for questions if you want them, but yes,
okay. All right. Here's a question. Bonk Buskman. Now, you must have disclosed this, Bonk, because Buskman wouldn't have known it. That you shop at thrift stores. That makes me love you even more because I am a thrift store queen. I am the queen. Like, I buy nearly everything in my house is used or consigned, and like most of my wardrobe. Is that true that you like the thrift stores?
that unfortunately that is not true.
Oh, okay.
The comment. So there's two things. I'm a big investor. I keep saying this.
You invest in stores.
Market leader TJ Maxx. If I have been investing in TJ Maxx for quite a while, and even through this downturn, TJ Maxx has stood tall. Like,
Let's
that stock has done
go. Let's
spectacular. But
go.
my wife likes going to, like, places like Home Goods and Marshalls because she just finds weird stuff there.
Sure, sure.
Um, it's not out of a desire to save money or anything. She just likes the thrill of the hunt. So
Okay.
she loves doing it.
Okay.
Um, Me, when I get dragged to it, I'll go to the little food section, and I'll probably find some exotic jams, but I tend not to dig too much into them.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I love thrift stores. Again, as I mentioned, well, a lot of the reason that I buy my furniture on consignment is because I've tried to buy new furniture these days, but all of it is cardboard. I've purchased a few things, and I feel like they're just not made well. So I like furniture that was made prior to 1987 or whatever. But I do like the thrift stores as well. Let's see if we have some. Mama see 1996. He's not a shopper. You guys put in some of your questions so that we can take advantage of having Bonk to Carnivore here. I saw a couple up here. Yes, transactional gold is transactionalgold.com is a website if you guys want that. Okay, here's a question from Mark the Regan. How come no one is mentioning the other countries' tariffs on our goods? So, Bonk, this is something that you hear from people defending Trump's policies and the tariffs. And they're basically saying, well, we should be embarking on this tariff war because other countries place tariffs on us. What is your
Because they largely don't exist, right? Trump came out with that little
well,
board, and he said, "Oh, Vietnam is tariffing us 94%." That's not true. It's 7.5%, right?
right,
China is not tariffing us 90%. They're tariffing us 9.5. It's basically a sales tax. Um, Tariffs from smaller countries, you have to understand, like, smaller countries have smaller economies, they have fewer things they do. For example, the country of Madagascar, they send us flowers and vanilla. Those are their only two industries. If they lose those, they have no jobs.
yeah,
So of course they're going to tariff, uh, you know, people trying to import flowers into Madagascar, right? They have to protect their limited economies. Colombia, they sell us fruit, they sell us flowers, they sell us a couple of other things, they sell us some wheat. Like, they have very limited things that they can employ their people with. So in those instances, it's okay to be a little bit protectionist in order to see to it that your country's economy continues working. The other reason for tariffs that most countries do them is because their governments simply don't take in enough revenue in order to sustain themselves. And
right.
that's not like the United States, where we've got a spending problem. They just don't have a tax base, right?
Hmm.
So
Right,
those tariffs are just kind of how they handle themselves. But we, as the United States, we shouldn't care about any of that, because we are the strongest and most diverse economy in the world,
right,
right? We have no weaknesses. We make everything. In the things that we don't make, it's just because we choose not to. We proved time and again over our history, especially during World War II, when we went to the wartime economy, that we can pivot on a dime and make whatever we damn well please.
wow,
Like,
wow.
if we decide something is important, we go out and fricking do it. Like, we don't have to beg.
Mm,
So the idea of tariffing other countries to protect ourselves, like that's just madness.
yeah,
Um, because the reality is, trade deficits are a good thing. They're a sign of prosperity. They're a sign that we can be consumers. The analogy I keep using is, this is like hiring a landscaper and a personal chef, to do things around the house, because you're doing so well that you don't have to do that anymore. You can now exchange money for time.
right,
And exchanging
right.
money for time is a beautiful thing.
Right. So it's the complete opposite of what Trump has
No,
presented to the world. Here's a question from Buskman. Oh, go ahead.
I
You
was
have
going to say, nobody's screwing us. Nobody. Like
no.
it,
We're not getting screwed. If anything, we're kind of screwing everyone else because we keep devaluing our dollar. And also, I mean, a lot of the empire building and taking down governments in other countries and all that stuff. So our foreign policy is a little whack. So yeah, we're not being screwed, and I agree with you on that. Buskman has a question. Bonk, what do you tell our fellow Americans when they say just trust Trump? He knows what he's doing because he's a businessman, or he's playing 5-dimensional, 12-dimensional chess while we're all playing checkers. What do you say to those people?
why should I? What in our history has indicated that he has earned any trust? This is a guy that started off with $4 billion in the late 80s, and through the greatest bull market in history, at the end of it, still had some of it left. Like, it's like, everybody likes to chirp Art of the Deal. You know what chapter 9 of Art of the Deal was? It was him boasting about his casinos. How did that work out?
Unbelievable.
Like, he has no second level thought. And the reality is, he causes this chaos and all of this harm. And if there's any incidental good that comes out of it, they just chirp up after the fact. Oh, well, that was the plan all along, right?
Mm,
This trade war. It was about tariffs, and then everybody realized there aren't really any tariffs that we have to worry about. Then it was about trade deficits, and then that didn't really work. And then it was about uh, you know refinancing the interest on our debt. And for like 12 minutes a few weeks ago,
oh my God.
Scott Bessent got his three handle on the 10-year yields. And then, of course, the administration immediately comes out and they go, that was the plan all along. We wanted to get the interest rate down so we could refinance our debt. Except the very next day, it spiked back up to 4.5% again. Right?
Unbelievable.
They glom onto any incidental benefit that comes out of the chaos, and they go, well, obviously that was why we did it. It was like, well, if that was why you did it, then why didn't you tell us that was the purpose before it happened? Why did you wait until after it happened to tell us that that was the plan? And of
Right.
course, every time it goes to pot, they stop talking about it. Pretty soon, they're going to start talking about, oh, what our real plan the whole time was to weaken the dollar to make it easier for us to export goods. I promise you, that's what's coming next. You know,
Unbelievable.
and people are just going to buy it. And it's like, why do you do this? Like, if I'm going to execute a strategy, I'm going to tell you what the goal is of that strategy. I'm going to tell you what my expected outcome is before it occurs. That way there we can measure it after the fact and go, is this a success or not? They do it an exact opposite. They execute all of this stuff and then they ignore everything terrible that happens, like the vaporizing of $11 trillion of market cap.
Right.
Uh, and they go, well, oh, this little thing over here, this tiny little thing worked. This was clearly what we wanted.
Right.
I'm sorry. No.
No, and well, and it is. It's like trying to grasp sand. That's the way I articulate it to my audience. These headlines and following these politicians, there's nothing there. It just falls right through your fingers because they're constantly moving and shifting and changing, and it's mind numbing. It's maddening, to be quite honest. I've seen them talking now, Bonk, about the Federal Reserve and Trump's going to abolish the Federal Reserve. And I don't know the intricacies of this. I do know that conservatives like myself have been pointing out how corrupt and evil the Federal Reserve is in terms of creating the debts and the deficits that we're seeing today and in their cozy relationship with the government. But at the same time, so I can see conservatives cheering for that, being like, "Oh, look, Trump took back the power to of monetary policy from those mean, evil bankers." But I can just see it being like a total rug pull, like that it's not really getting rid of the Federal Reserve. It's just moving it or morphing it into something else and probably worse, probably involving like a digital currency or some kind of token measure that they're going to try to, shove on the American people. Your thoughts about that?
So I am anti-Federal Reserve abolishment for
Yeah.
one simple reason. The Federal Reserve, and most people don't realize this, they provide the plumbing that allows everything to function, right? At a macro level, at a global level. If we lose the Federal Reserve, we lose our reserve currency status, and that reserve currency status has afforded us so many benefits over the years. We can disagree with how the Federal Reserve operates at times, right? And I certainly criticize them at periods. But I will say this, everybody should be on their knees begging, praising that the Federal Reserve remains exactly as it is right now, because they have been the only thing that has made the damage this man has caused in the first 3 months as minor as it has been. Like, if you think it's bad, imagine if Jerome Powell was not there, because the Federal Reserve is the firewall. They're the counterbalance to Capitol
Hmm.
Hill.
Interesting.
The Capitol Hill makes fiscal policy, and if it's bad fiscal policy, it's up to the Federal Reserve to create offset monetary policy to keep things stable.
Hmm.
If there was a yes man instead of Jerome Powell there, and I've criticized Jerome Powell, there's a lot of things he's done wrong, but if there was a Trump yes man in there, these markets would not be down 20%. They would be down 40%.
Mm. I
He is
think in
not
that
the hero we deserve, but he's the hero we need right now.
Right, but also though the Fed, and this is another conversation. We should get into the Fed because my understand, like the fractional reserve banking, like it seems like they're cheating. Like that it's these banksters, that operate in private. There's no oversight whatsoever. It's a private banking cartel. They aren't subservient to the federal government, and I understand their actions right now, but I think there's some really like big structural problems with the Federal Reserve
100%.
that that
Reform the reserve. Reform, not
yeah,
destroy. I'm
yeah,
totally in the camp of reform.
yeah.
Um,
So we should talk about that. We should actually, when we come back, we should make that half of our discussion. Now I do have to let you go because we have to go to commercial break though. Bonk, this has been really fun. I really enjoy talking to you, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing. Anything that you want to say last to the audience before we let you go?
Oh, my second closing statements. Oh, damn! I only had
I know.
one.
Well, you threw me off. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get Bonk out of here by like,
I do. I have 7 minutes before I have to make it to the airport. But
right. Oh my gosh, I so appreciate you. You're awesome. Well, I
no, it's
have to
great.
take my
No,
break though.
this was fun. Always happy. Always happy. You're my favorite of the mainline podcasters. You're the only one that
Oh,
stood tall. You and you
yay.
and Daniel, and to a lesser extent Dana. Like you're the only three left.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, awesome.
no, it's no. We covered a lot of great stuff. I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. I'm happy to come back and do it again sometime. But yeah, this was good, and hopefully people learned something today. You know,
Oh, I did.
yeah,
They
as a
did.
lesson.
We did. I mean, you're invaluable. So, yeah, I would love if you will grant us, a couple more shows. I would love to make you a quasi regular voice on the Shannon Joy Show. So, I really appreciate you. Go make that flight, and you have a wonderful weekend. Bonk to Carnivore. Thank you so much, and we'll get you in about 3 weeks if that's okay with you for another.
Sounds great.
All right, awesome. All right. Thank you, my friend. Okay, guys, let's go. And that was, of course, Bonk de Carnivore. I learned a ton. I always do. Every time he comes in, I learn so much. And yes, we will have a full discussion on the Federal Reserve because there are a lot of problems with it. I know, we just scratched the surface, but he's not wrong. And I agree with him in the sense that we like I can so see the president of the United States, Donald Trump, and his people like abolishing the Federal Reserve, okay, and pitching it to conservatives because we've been so primed for this for the past 10, 15 years, talking about how corrupt the Federal Reserve is. I could see them really trying some shenanigans with this where we end up in something drastically worse than the Federal Reserve as it exists today. So we've got to be ahead of that and be prepared for that. And that comes with knowledge and it comes with learning. And so that's what we'll do with Bonk in a subsequent show. And yes, Bonk is fantastic. He was talking about Daniel Horowitz, we're going to have Daniel Horowitz, by the way, back on the show very soon. He's had a lot of problems with his voice recently. And so he's really minimizing his voice. And he hasn't been going on shows because I've been asking him to come on a couple times. So we'll see if we can work him in. I know he's seeing someone for it. And so we'll see if we can work him in the next few weeks. But yes, Dana Lash is another one. She's good. I mean, maintaining the line. And so we really enjoyed this conversation. And we're going to go to break real quick. When we come back, we're going to finish out the show. Okay? We'll be back in a minute right here on the Shannon Joy Show.
After a lifetime of hard work and smart investing, the last thing you want to worry about is losing your retirement savings. Hi, I'm Paul Stone, CEO of Colonial Metals Group. We specialize in helping hardworking Americans like you take back control of their financial future, safeguard their savings. In economic times like these, millions turn to physical precious metals as a form of insurance, while conventional investment choices face challenges or even collapse. If you have an IRA, 401k, or other type of retirement account, my team at Colonial Metals Group would like to help you build a financial protection plan outlining the most secure future for you. We've put together a free protection kit showing how you can start investing in precious metals 100% tax and penalty free to protect and grow your wealth. You can download it for free now by clicking the button below. Customers, we're very proud to say, across the country have been very impressed by my team's in-depth knowledge of financial history and their ability to listen to you. We hold the same conservative values you hold and on ones our great nation was built on. And we can't wait to start helping you and working with you. Again, just click the button below to download our retirement protection kit for free now.
Hey everyone. So, you know what is scarier than a storm or a blackout? Being completely cut off, alone. No phone, no internet, no way to reach anyone. This is why I trust sat123.com and their satellite phones to keep me connected no matter what. With a satellite phone from Sat123, it doesn't matter if you're out in the wilderness or caught in the middle of a disaster. This phone works when cell towers don't. It's the ultimate tool for staying in touch when everything else has failed. Here's the best part. Sat123.com is family owned. 100% committed to quality and reliability, and they believe in keeping you and your family safe wherever you are. Right now, if you go to sat123.com/joy, that is sat123.com/joy, and use the JOY promo code, JOY, for 10% off, you'll get 10% off your entire order, which is a phenomenal deal from an amazing company that supports the Shannon Joy Show. Be ready for anything. Stay connected with sat123.com/joy. It is the strangest thing, right? Hydration. Seems simple enough. It's basic hydration, but it is something that I haven't thought about for most of my life. And as a result, I think that I've been borderline dehydrated for most of my adult life. Now, when you're younger, your body might be better able to handle dehydration, but as you age, you notice it more and more. Your body becomes way more susceptible to dehydration, and this can result in a lot of ailments like muscle cramping, bladder problems, fatigue, and also brain fog. So about a year and a half ago, I started adding daily hydration with 2 packets of Native Path Hydrate every single day. And this became part of my morning routine. And guys, I cannot believe the difference. I can't believe that I wasn't hydrating for most of my life. It is a huge and noticeable difference. In fact, when I don't have my Native Path Hydrate in the morning, I can tell, and it's a tougher day. You need to hydrate, people, and now you can for 45% off with a sick deal from our friends over at Native Path Hydrate. Go to nativepathhydrate.com/joy. That's nativepathhydrate.com/joy to learn all about the benefits of hydration and unlock a 45% off deal that is just for the Joy audience. This is the best price point that I have seen anywhere, and this is a workhorse product. It is the best in the market for just basic hydration. I absolutely love it, and you will too. So go to nativepathhydrate.com/joy today to unlock that deal and get started on daily hydration. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Final segment of the final show of the week. Thank you, Jesus. It is Friday, just wrapping up with Bonk de Carnivore. The next interview I do with Bonk, we will address the Federal Reserve. You can actually ask him questions. He joins some of the amazing spaces that are put on by non-hyphenated American, the morning diner spaces, I think every Tuesday and Thursday. And you can have interaction with him there and ask your questions. We are all dead. I am so sorry. I see your comment right here. I posted 6 questions, 0 read. I am so sorry. Because I'm self-producing today, I've had a hard time keeping up with and navigating the live chat and finding the questions and getting them to Bonk. Bonk also took me off guard. I wasn't looking for questions because I knew we were approaching the 1 p.m. end time, and I thought he had to leave right at 1 p.m. So when he invited questions, I was like, oh gosh. And so I was scrambling, trying to find some. So I really apologize. We are all dead. In the next one, the next live, I will try to make sure that your questions get answered. But yes, this comment here, they are trying to politicize the Fed right now. I agree. I'm sensing they're priming the pump for something, that the Trump administration is priming the pump for some type of action. Clearly, they're trying to mess with this economy. Clearly, they don't care how this impacts the little guy. A lot of this is involved. A lot of what is involved here is Plunder. Bonk de Carnivore really backed up the assertion of Catherine Austin Fitts that the people in the know, the president and the people behind the president pulling the strings, they know this is coming. And so right now they're plundering. So they're doing rug pull after rug pull after rug pull. And they're all positioning themselves to be okay when things crater. And we don't know exactly how this is going to impact and when it's going to impact. That was the one question I didn't get to ask him, was about a timeline. But I know every time I ask questions about timeline, no one really knows. We're in the dark here. And there are a lot of competing power centers. That's another thing for everyone to understand in all of this. Sometimes people get the sentiment that there is one evil mastermind or a group of evil masterminds, and they're behind the scenes manipulating everything and like twirling their mustache and laughing maniacally about how they're going to, own everything while we own nothing and take over the whole world. And while I'm sure these people are megalomaniac, control freak lunatics, and a lot of them don't care if they kill a bunch of people and plunder all of us, the reality is that they don't all talk to each other. They're not all in the same club. They're in clubs, they're different clubs, and those clubs fight with each other. So you have warring factions, warring oligarchs, warring nations, different power centers, the tech bros, the banksters, they're all angling for position in a very tumultuous time. And so that makes it difficult actually for them to really work together to crush all of us. So if we are open and aware and we're willing to hear people that we might not agree with all the time on certain things, but we're willing to really learn, then we, the little people, can actually be okay in all of this. And so when you see that signal of them politicizing the Fed, if the PSYOP is going out, right, the Fed, that leads me to believe that they might try another type of action, and we're just gonna have to keep an eye on it. And maybe people who were always for abolishing the Fed, maybe we pause that for a moment and say, yeah, we got to abolish the Fed at some point, or completely dismantle it and recreate it in a way that is transparent and that works for the American people and the regular investor, get rid of all the fractional reserve banking and all the cheating that they're doing, then maybe that's a conversation that we have. But again, no crisis decision making, right? We don't go off half-cocked and do things like this because we're in crisis mode. We want to slow everything down, not speed it up. So that's my thought on that. And you guys know I've been a huge critic of the Federal Reserve, and I still am. So Bonk and I will have a good conversation about that. Liberty 00, Shannon is correct. We should not let emotions get in the way. It should only be transactional. I stop listening when I detect TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and I'm always open to legit criticism. I think that's a great idea. And I think that TDS actually exists on both sides. I think that there are people who are hyper emotional about President Trump when they shouldn't be. People who support him and also people who are critics of him. And really what we should be is we should just be cold stone operators, or, you know what I mean? Like it shouldn't be emotional. It should be based on discernible policy outcome. And this is why I completely oppose Trump in most everything that he's doing, because I'm looking at the discernible policy outcome opposed to the guy. I could care less why he's doing things, really, to be honest. I just don't like what he's doing. Honor Seeker is with us on the live chat. Get Tom DiLorenzo on your show, Shannon. And he's an economist from Mises. Okay, I will take that into consideration for future shows for sure. Yes, Hegelian dialectic, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? Problem, reaction, solution. Only these guys try to game plan everything, play both sides of the aisle, both political parties, and move us into predetermined solutions that they already have set up, giving us the illusion of some kind of choice or some kind of solution to the problem that we've identified. And yes, they use that tactic all the time, and they love to use a good crisis, right? So I love Bonk's advice, like keep calm, carry on, be cool, don't light your hair on fire, don't go crazy when this all happens, and don't accept their predetermined solution, whatever it is. If it's abolishing the Fed or moving us onto a central banking digital currency or some type of stable coin or token or some new mechanism, the 21st century food stamps, right, is essentially what it will be if they convince enough people to get on those tokens. The answer is, in the short term, do not accept whatever their predetermined solution is. If more Americans had refused the COVID shots, more Americans would be alive today. CJP Rumble, of course, never let a crisis go to waste. Yep. Yeah, the PSYOPs are 24/7, 365. Oh my gosh, Insurrection Barbie is really famous. There are a couple of Twitter accounts that are super, like, millions of followers, and they're being exposed right now as being psyops. There is a lot of action on Twitter right now, very well-known accounts that are actually run. I mean, it's multiple people posting 24/7, and they are not real. In the case of Insurrection Barbie, apparently they found out who the real person was, and she's like a criminal. I don't have it in front of me right now, so I can't go after it. But yeah, there are psyops everywhere. It's so much of what we see today is a show. It is a production. It's not real. And so we just have to get as much good information as we possibly can, hunker down in our local communities, and ride it out. Catherine Austin Fitz calls it turtling. This is a turtle necklace. I just thought it was cute. I just recently got it at TJ Maxx, by the way. I didn't tell Bonk. I should have told. I like TJ Maxx's. They have like costume jewelry, and so they had a good sale the other week, and so I bought this little turtle necklace, and it reminded me of Catherine Austin Fitz because she describes a process of turtling, like when the psyop comes, when like the tidal wave comes and it's super violent. I guess turtles, like they pull in and they flip over and they just like ride it out. And she calls it turtling. Like you just hunker down and you turtle and you wait for that massive wave to pass. And then we come up for air and decide what to do. And so that's why I liked this little turtle necklace. And that's why I've been wearing it. I can't believe I didn't tell Catherine about that either when she was on the show with me this week. It's crazy. So anyway, all right, guys, I think that we have come to the conclusion and the end of the Shannon Joy Show. It was great to be with you guys today on the show. Ranger 1791, great to see you on the live chat as well. Bill Benz, glad to see you on the live chat as well. And yeah, LT Oracle of Truth. Besant took down the British pound, so why wouldn't he do it to the dollar? Thought that was pretty interesting. All right, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you to our sponsors, Colonial Metals Group. Make sure you guys, if you are going to talk to them, go to my page, colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy, and start there to go through the process of learning about how to back up your retirement with physical gold and silver. This is a very real and legitimate way to weather that incoming storm and diversify out of some of those precarious stocks that Bonk talked about today. And so there should be it should be part of your allocation. And so you can learn about that self-directed IRA. I'm going to be doing that myself and saving for my retirement and backing it up with physical gold and silver. So colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. I hope you all have a wonderful Resurrection Sunday this week as we celebrate the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. For those of you in the audience who are believers, as I am, I hope that this will be a wonderful weekend of reflection and love and just absolute thankfulness for our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. There are all kinds of solutions out there, right? There are ways to protect your family from some of the environmental toxins and the COVID vaccines and the shots. And there are ways that we prepare to protect our financial houses from all of the turmoil that is coming. So gold and silver, and we try to protect our communities by coming together and organizing and advocating and do what we can in this world to be servants of Christ and to proclaim his love. But we all know that the ultimate protection, ultimate freedom only comes from one place, and that is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so as we celebrate the miracle that was the resurrection and his sacrifice so that we could be in relationship with God through him is an absolute miracle. And let us celebrate that this weekend. Without Jesus, this show would not be here. Everything that we've done here on the Shannon Joy Show is because of the benevolence and the protection and the love of Christ and God. So we give all of the glory to him, and hopefully this microphone as well. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being with us today. We'll be back on Monday to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.